Now, more of Illinois Rising, presented by the Illinois Policy Institute, the only show directly addressing the problems and solutions for Illinois. Now, from AM 560, here's Dan Proft.
Dan Proft back with Pat Hughes on this edition of Illinois Rising. Picking up on a discussion we alluded to earlier, Pat, tax credit scholarships, which are in the mix in any potential deal on school funding that is struck between the General Assembly and the governor. There's an op-ed this week in the Chicago Tribune by one of these overpaid, sophisticated, barbarian school superintendents that are destroying K-12 education in this state. This one is David Larson, Glenbard Township High School District 87 out there in western burbs in DuPage County, Glen Ellen, Lombard area. He writes about tax credit scholarships. Quote, tax credit scholarships are not good for the public. Similar to vouchers, they are a workaround of traditional public schools and ultimately channel would-be tax dollars toward private education. In some cases, teachers at the private schools where tax credit scholarships are used are not required to hold the same credentials as public school teachers.
Ooh, credentials.
Heavens. Here's the real kicker. Ideologically, school vouchers place a greater value on personal choice than the importance of equity, commonality, and public accountability. The problem with scholarships is they present choice. So I'm looking forward to his next op-ed where he rails against the GI Bill, the Stafford Loan Program, and Pell Grants as well.
Oh, I thought you were quoting Stalin. Was this the school district guy who says that? I didn't know who you were quoting.
This is David Larson, the superintendent of the Glenbard High School District 87.
Sure,
Now,
and when you're in the leafy western suburbs, Dan, schools that, like you've always said, aren't as good as those people think that they are, and the superintendent thinks that they are, it's one thing to say that kind of stuff from that perch. But when you're in a failing Chicago public school and your kid has no chance, and there's a closed Chicago Archdiocese school up the road that could educate 2 for 1. In other words, they could do a better job educating and do 2 kids for every 1 that's going on, then it's a whole different story.
well, I would say that per the 16 grand plus that Glenbard 87 spends per students, with 26% of their students performing at grade level, I'd say there are some private schools out Glenbard School District way that are doing a hell of a better job for a hell of a lot less money, and those parents are paying twice for it, and a lot of those families are middle-income families. Just because you're out in DuPage County doesn't mean you're independently wealthy, of course. I think sometimes that's the piece of it. But I understand why he's worried about money not going to K through 12, despite the fact that in the state of Illinois, in the last 20 years, we've increased spending on K through 12, all dollars in, 74%, while total enrollment has increased only 6%, real terms. So 12x increase in spending as compared to enrollment over 20 years. It's not enough for Larson, though. He's worried about anybody voluntarily contributing additional funds to provide scholarships to low to middle income families so they can have some of the choices that the more affluent and politically connected have. But I understand why he wants to guard those public tax dollars jealously, because he's devouring them. He makes $234,000 a year, does David Larson. His annuities equal another 48 grand, retirement enhancements of 29 grand, and other benefits of 2,400, plus the 20 vacation days and 15 sick days. So he's got a sweet gig, and so he has got to demagogue issues that don't advance the interests of the system that rewards him so handsomely.
Yeah, see, so opportunity scholarships that would exist in his district, for example, given the performance that you just indicated is going on in his district, what would happen, Dan, is the people who are lower income in his district would start to say, boy, my kids aren't really getting educated as well here. I'm going to go to the neighboring school, the neighboring Catholic school, the other private school nearby, and then his enrollment's going to drop. And then it's going to expose what you just said to a local swath of people, and they're going to realize that this guy can't do his job for $350,000 a year. And all he cares about is himself, and he's cloaking himself in this idea of public education and all this nonsense, and he's a clown.
Well, here's the thing, too, about this. Since a race is so in the news this week, School choice programs around the country disproportionately benefit minority families that are not forced to take the opportunity scholarships, that desire them and desire to have the same choices as the more affluent and politically connected have. So what you're actually doing by opposing school choice programs like the one proposed, the tax credit scholarship program proposed as part of a school funding deal in Illinois, is saying it's okay to discriminate against people based on their household income and their address. And if that happens to be mostly black and brown children and black and brown families, well, that's okay too, as long as it's in furtherance of the system. Because this is what he said: place a greater value on personal choice than the importance of equity, commonality, public accountability, whatever he means by those phrases. But it's very clear what he means, generally speaking. Personal choice needs to be subordinated to supporting by force the mothership.
Yeah, that's because he is on top of the mothership. And look, this is why you call them sophisticated barbarians, Dan. They pretend with those phrases that you just mentioned that have, by the way, those phrases have no meaning. They're just words strung together. They pretend that they're battling in favor of children and in favor of education, but they're just battling for themselves and the people who work for them. And they're turning a blind eye to people who are in need. And they're the same people they're pretending to help. And that's why they're barbarians.